Well, hey there, YouTube. It's Petey Two Finger. I was watching one of these weird music videos. The topic of Frank Zappa came up, and right away there was a couple things in this video that I didn't really jive with. Now, of course, when it comes to these topics, stuff going back in the past, you you can very well sit there and demand proof, and I want the truth. You also have to realize that most of this stuff it's conjecture, it's hearsay, it could be just a bunch of baloney. So here is me adding to the confusion. 82 Fingers Frank Zappa Fun Fact video. Sound good? Let's jump right in. Fun fact number one: Frank was not a rock and roller. At his heart, he was a gifted composer of what we refer to as classical music. Now, he worked in rock and roll seemingly as a means to an end. So he would create this project, they would work hard rehearsing and tour it, reap those rewards, roll that into the next exhibition outing, and then again, reap those rewards, always rolling it back in. And ultimately, he was fortunate enough to see his dream, writing music for the symphony orchestra, composing, as they say, for the symphony orchestra, manifest itself as a reality. At the very end of his life, that project is known as the Yellow Shark. Now, we think of the 60s, think of a lot of things. Vito Polakis. Frank was not a freak. The man was a workaholic, although he certainly resembled a typical counterculture mindset, what you would think. The man's a freak. Well, he did not abuse drugs and alcohol. I believe Frank was one to enjoy a glass of wine with his dinner, but he didn't lean on alcohol, and he certainly, apparently, did not tamper with substance. Creating music was Frank's lifetime addiction. Now, that's not to say he never got high. Maybe he did smoke once or twice, I believe, is the legend, and he didn't like it. How he was able to navigate the topsy-turvy world of rock and avoid the magical eyedropper, someone dosing him with LSD or some potent, industrialized, weaponized psychedelic. That's amazing to me that he avoided someone dosing him. You would think that would be the end game for a lot of these creepy LA types. It seems far-fetched to think the world we live in was a Frank Zappa who never took a psychedelic. That's just bizarre. But it's not for me to speak on that. As far as I know, he was practically a teetotaler. Actually, he loved to drinking his coffee and his vegetable sticks. Now, Frank becoming involved in politics toward the end of his time here on Earth, Zappa's admirable advocacy of free speech often overshadows the more bizarre elements of his political influence. Frank was given the title of Special Ambassador to the West on Trade, Culture, and Tourism in Czechoslovakia. So his political impact on that nation cannot be overstated. And boy, they loved him in Czechoslovakia. I believe he settled a labor dispute there. Now, in opposition to the performative politics of the 60s hippie age, Zappa had a tremendous impact on the political landscape, the entire world, with his revolutionary compositions. Let's not forget influencing young people to vote in the MTV era, speaking out against things such as censorship, the PMRC, and other evildoers, part of Frank's mission here on the earth while he was with us. Ultimately, through a mind-numbing life of extremely hard work, Frank earned his place at the top of the heap. And I think of rock and roll families, the Zappa family is our Kennedys. It's our royal family of rock. They really are. I can think no greater composer, musician, band leader, rock and roller. The man has become the definition, a true legend. The amount of influence he's left behind not be understated. A legacy, I believe, no one on this planet will ever come close to touching. And I sincerely feel this about Frank's influence. Yes, Frank was arrested. He was set up by local police, employed in the manufacture of one pornographic recording, audio tape, set up by an undercover police, and he was charged. So for the rest of his career, Frank enjoyed lampooning society's sexual fetishes and hang-ups. Is there irony to be found in this fact that he himself could have done a lot better for himself and his family had he chosen to keep it in his pants when he was on the road away from his wife? Well, that's nobody's business except for between him and his partner. Frank was a hard-working family man. I believe he made a huge mistake when he decided he did not really need to keep those wedding vows. This mistake did not fully manifest itself until long after he was deceased. Perhaps the second mistake was in the fact that he did not take much concern or much good care of his personal health, choosing chain smoking in the black water, die young, and leave a good-looking corpse. Really sad. His Grammy-winning synclavier, do you say synclavier, which is a rudimentary sampling keyboard, is set up an 88-keyed piano-type controller connected to a hardware system featuring a monochrome monitor with a light pen, which didn't have a mouse. It had a QWERTY keyboard, I believe, something like this. No mouse. Instead, a light pen, which was a stick-like device with maybe an infrared sensor on the end of it, I'm not sure, coily cable, and you could operate this to affect and change parameters on the monochrome display. The synclavier, do you say synclavier, was a monumentally expensive device. I believe it cost $500,000 back in the 80s. Only a few people had them. And it was a sampling keyboard. You say, I've never heard of a synclavier. Well, have you heard Michael Jackson's Beat It? Those first notes in the beginning? That gong-like type of synthesizer pad that comes in? Synclavier. So he recorded a Grammy-winning synclavier album entitled Jazz from Hell, and he received a parental advisory decal slapped on those albums, despite the fact that the entire album is free from a single syllable or lyric. It is an instrumental album with a parental warning about the lyrics. And this album of instrumental music that doesn't have any lyrics. It's an album filled entirely of instrumental music. And the cover of the album, it's a headshot of Frank wearing a white dress shirt, a black tie, and a black jacket. He's looking right in the camera, kind of scowling. Nonetheless, it's nothing we would need to warn the kiddies about. Really, really ironic and understandable now why he was speaking out about censorship back in the early mid 80s, like he did. Frank did not ever appear in blackface. The image in question, the cover of the Joe's Garage album, well, can't believe I'm actually going to try to explain this, but Joe's Garage, Frank had decorated his face with a grease paint to simulate the automotive grease on his face. Joe's Garage, here he is, not in blackface, but automotive grease, like he's been working changing the muffler and the oil on your vehicle all day. That was the joke, that was the gag. However, now it's come out that Frank Zappa's a racist because he was doing blackface. And I got to tell you, hello, kitty. Okay. Would you like a treat? He loathed and despised racism. Frank was a equal opportunity employer for his band. If you look at the list of musicians that he admired as a young man, none of them are white. His influences were African American bluesmen and guitar aficionados, people like Johnny Guitar Watson was his guitar idol. So Elmore James, any of the Kings, BB, Albert Collins, any of those old-timey blues guitar musicians, those were Frank's people. And I thought it was well known, he despised blackface. Frank was not that type of person at all. So again, I really don't have any authority on the topic. I'm just a fan. I will give my little personal thing that I had always wanted to see him perform live, and I never did. He became ill and left us way too soon. More recently, I managed to see his son Dweezil performing his father's music, and that was a triumphant and emotional evening for me. I walked away from that. I had discovered his sister, Frank had 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys. Diva, Moon, Dweezil, and Amit. And I ended up reading. I read the book that Frank wrote about himself, which is called The Real Frank Zappa Book. And I also read Earth to Moon, his daughter's autobiography that deals basically with her childhood growing up in that family of rock royalty. I never cried reading a book before, but oh my goodness. She dealt with the day that Frank left us, and it just destroyed me emotionally to read about that. I lost my father when I was 15, so maybe there was a connection there. And more recently, there was this more almost public feud that was fought through the press and lawyers, and it just was nasty stuff going on. I had assumed a lot of things and went with the crowd of people who were choosing sides in the family, who they want to elevate, who they want to tear down. And I got to say, more recently, I've come to realize that uh, I may have spoke too soon, uh, and I felt poorly about some of the things that I had typed on the internet. Got to take all that back. I love all of those people equally. I think they're Zappas. Amit, Dweezil, Moon, and Diva. I love them all. And I wish nothing but success and happiness for those people. So hopefully we'll see more of the brothers working together. Ultimately, I think everybody would like to see that. They did work together briefly in the 90s, and that was something, I think it was magical. Although I don't own any of those recordings, gee, I would love to get any kind of even MP3 copy of those two albums, Shampoo Horn and Music for Pets. I do not own any of that music. But you will find me on Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time. I'll be over at the Rock Tales podcast. And when Dweezil comes to Chicago, I'll more than likely be attending that as well. So you guys, thank you for spending some time with me. Please understand this is all just hearsay. It's just me pontificating on someone, this family that I really admire, this music that I've come to have infinite respect and great love for Frank's music. But this is all just general hearsay, is what it is. Just my opinion. And it speaks like there are takeaways. There's things we can learn. You know, take your health seriously. Take your marriage seriously. I think that's the real takeaway for me. I can see how those choices he made, how that ended up. It took some time, but man, that family imploded on itself, and I really don't think that would have went down the way it did had things been different between Frank and Gail personally, and that's none of my business, and I admit that. So I am completely talking smack. Forgive me. My bad. Ultimately, I always like to say, hug your pets and peace before I end these things. I love you guys. Thank you, and good night.